It seems like decades since I had teenagers at home, and it's not far from that. I remember the day my son came home and he had a Mohican haircut. So he'd had it shaved and he had the bit down the middle. And my wife was in tears when I got home. And I said to her, "Sweetie, it's not a moral issue. There's only 2 weeks between a good haircut and a bad one. So it'll grow out." That didn't salve her at all. Just a little while after that, my daughter came home with blue hair. I was the division youth director. And I said, I won't tell you what I said. I spoke to her gently. And my wife took me aside and she said, "It's not a moral issue. It will wash out. Don't get yourself in a knot, you know." And so they take us through some incredible journeys, our kids, and that's one of the reasons why there is a bond that is unbreakable. And we're going to talk about family a little bit this afternoon. What I want to do is take you through some of the Value Genesis results and then show you the type of families that do best on all the measures that we have. So I'm very aware that after lunch the Tego effect kicks in really easy. You know what the Tego effect is? The eyes glaze over. People just stare into space and they've gone to sleep with their eyes open. So I am going to watch for that, and I am prone to run along the seats and do all sorts of things to keep you awake. So please hang in there. You want to see me run on the seat now, do you? Look, let me tell you another story. I had a guy in my church who used to, and he had a medical condition, but he used to go to sleep every week. I mean, he'd sit down after the second hymn and he would be not just asleep, he would be snoring. This is a church of 600 members, and they had a very high platform that you preached from because you had a balcony. And I said to him, "Cyril, the next time you go to sleep, you will never sleep in one of my services again." And he said, "I'm so sorry, I don't mean to do it. It's just I relax and I'm gone." And so I watched him go to sleep. I was telling a children's story and I had this toy snake, you know. This is confirming in you that you will never want me for a pastor. And at the appropriate moment, I leapt off the top of the balcony screaming with this snake. And as I hit the floor, Cyril woke up to find this snake right beside him. He never slept in another sermon again. But wasn't that nasty? I mean, you can't imagine Nigel doing that to you. Okay, Value Genesis 2. Let me tell you where we got our results. We took up the first Value Genesis study 20 years ago. So it's been not quite what the report said last night, but 20 years since the last one to this one. Last time it was the tail end of Gen X. This time it's the tail end of Gen Y. So we're looking at a fairly major gap. And you're going to see some fairly big differences in the young people of 20 years ago and the ones that are currently at school. Last time we used the local church as our base. This time we used the SDA high schools right across the South Pacific Division. So we've got every high school in Australia and New Zealand, and we've got several missing from the islands, but we got the most prominent ones in all the nations. We ended up taking up this report, gathering these stats from Adventist as well as non-Adventist kids. In Australia and New Zealand, it seemed best not to separate these kids anymore, and we gave it to everybody. So we've now got a really good database of something like 3,263 kids, which is a very healthy sample. And we've now got a sample of, we had a possible sample of 1745, and we ended up with 80% response rate. There were some kids who decided to give me an anatomy lesson. You know, you were filling out those dots this morning. Well, they made all sorts of nice little patterns in them. So that made those... I don't think any of you would have done that. Did anybody do that here? Do Christmas trees for me and all that sort of stuff? Well, that meant that we had to clean the data a little bit, and we ended up with 1359 total in our sample. And I can tell you how many girls and how many boys. There are more girls than boys there are in the general population anyway. And for those who are interested, I ended up writing 2 reports. These are 260-page reports. I would advise you to buy one of these if you have trouble sleeping. You could have this on your bedside table, and when you're having a bit of a problem, open it up. And within minutes, I can almost guarantee that you'll be gone, because this is a typical statistical report. It is a little more interesting than just reading pages and pages of stats, because I've done a review of the literature in each one of the major areas, but that's available if anybody... Hand up all of you who really want one. I thought that was the case. So I only brought 3 with me. If we look at it, I'm going to give you some of the good news about our kids first. I don't know whether we can drop some of those lights a bit so it's a bit clearer. The best seats today will be in the front because the print is fairly small. But I've given you the results for Value Genesis 1 and Value Genesis 2 here, and you can see the dramatic shift, a 6 percentage point shift, which represents something like 28% swing. That is a major, major shift. The question was, I have a real sense that God is guiding me. 1 in every 4 kids says that is always true. That's quite mind-blowing. So you're looking at a generation of kids, and most people would look at them and say, this generation's not terribly religious, but they are spiritual. And if you look at those results, you're looking at, 54% who say it's almost always true or always true. So over half of our kids have a sense that God is guiding in their lives. I want to applaud that. It means that we've got something happening good in concert between our families, our schools and our churches. When those 3 groups of people plug into the life of our kids, something good happens. And that's the result you've got. Now that's a major improvement over 20 years ago. If we look at the next table here, the importance of religious faith, how important is your religious faith in your life? And you can see again, we're looking here at 60% who say it's very important or the most important thing in their lives. Now, when I've presented this at other times, in other places, I have people who are very sceptical about these results. Let me tell you a little bit about stats. I collected results from all the schools, as I said, but when the first 2 schools came in, I put all of the data in and I ran the study all the way through and got the percentages and all the rest of it. And I want to tell you that it was only about, I can't remember the number, it would have been about less than a quarter of the total sample. But that sample gave me the same results as the end of the whole study. Minute shifts in percentage points. So it doesn't matter where you take this group of people from, anywhere in Australia, you're going to get these sorts of results.
The results that you got, was that from general, from public schools and private schools?
No.
Only Adventist?
Only the Adventist schools.
Thank you.
So if you look at those results, that's quite staggering, that 60% of kids would be telling us it's very important or the most important thing in their lives. So please don't write off our kids as not being interested in spiritual things. They are deeply interested, and make that point very clearly through here. This is faith maturity by age. You can see that last time there was a drop. By the time they got to the end of high school, there was less mature faith in year 12 than there was in year 7. And all of us said, what is going on? How do you get those results? And most of you who've been teachers know what happens towards the end of high school. They are then questioning and testing the boundaries on everything. making a decision whether they're going to stay or jump. And so to find that we've now had a major increase, have a look at that jump for year 12s, 28 to 42%. That's almost 100% increase in 20 years. That's a huge shift. And it says that kids are serious about their faith. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is this. They are much more spiritual than they were 20 years ago, but they're far less religious. Do you know what I mean by that? So they are very personally responsive to God, but the trappings of religion are not quite as important as they were. So it doesn't translate from the spiritual connection to the behaviour within the church. If we look at youth attitudes to the church, I found this just mind-blowing. I could not have predicted this. It just shows you when you don't work on the coalface for a while, you don't understand what's happening in kids' lives. But this is what young people said about their church. And because you can't read at the back, I'll pick out some of these for you. Church members get on well with each other, 58 to 66%. So they look at their church and they say, hey, this isn't a bad place to be. Church gets on well. If you look at the next one, my church accepts people who are different, has moved from 57 to 71. That is dramatic shifts. And because it's right across the board, it tends to tell us that young people feel good about their own local congregations. A caveat. A lot of these kids go to churches that are connected to the school. So the church is on the campus of the school, which means that the church invariably tries an awful lot harder to meet the needs of teenagers because of that setting than maybe would be the case in other churches. So we need to be somewhat careful with these results, but they are quite stunning. If you come down here, remember last night I said my church encourages me to ask questions, is a great predictor of whether kids will stay in the church. Have a look at the shift. These kids have moved from 48% of them to 61% who tell us that that's true. My church encourages me to ask questions. That's an enormous predictor as to how they feel about the church and their future connections to it. So that is a very healthy shift. My church is open to new ideas, 42 to 59%. And again, that's something like a 50% increase. That's just mind-blowing. The next one, my church expects people to learn and think, has moved from 46, where it was under 50%, to almost 2/3. So again, really good results. And we can come down, there's a few that fall apart from there on. I go to church programs because I want to, has actually gone backwards. That worries me. And how do you reconcile those two things? I like my church, it does great stuff, but I don't go to church because I want to. That deserves more research. This is one of the results that was quite frightening to administrators across Australia and New Zealand. We've moved from having 81% of our teenagers baptised at the end of high school to 38%. So being spiritual doesn't necessarily translate into being baptised. Now I need to show you the bad news. Oh, this is good, sorry. This is good news. I mean, this is very good news. This question asked, how satisfied are you with the Adventist Church? And 80% of them said they were either satisfied with most or very satisfied. So that is terrific, isn't it? Aren't you encouraged by that? Aren't you encouraged by that? All right, some people are awake. I think that's fantastic that 80% of our kids would say they were satisfied with most or very satisfied. So we've seen some shifts in the church and the way we do church, and it's appreciated. If we look at this is again a good result, an excellent chance that I will be still in the church when I'm 40 years of age. This is one of those questions that measures intention. I intend to still be connected when I'm 40. Well, there are more of them now than there were 20 years ago, but when you add the two columns together, there's really no statistical difference. They're about the same. A good chance to an excellent chance. We've got 75% who tell us that there's a good chance they're going to stay in the church. Now, sadly, last night we looked at how many have left the church. And 20 years ago, it was 75% who told us it was a good or an excellent chance they'd still be in the church at 40. Go back and have a look at the young people who are in the church when that first Value Genesis survey was taken and ask how many are still with us. 75% said there was a really good chance they would be. The chances are that about 25% survived. So there's a difference between intention and reality. This is a really, really exciting chart. I can't see many people lighting up. I mean, this is a really, really exciting chart. This is telling us that kids are saying, this is done by years, years of age, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And the closer the score is to 1, the more important they see religious faith is in their lives. So have a look at the shift from 20 years ago. It's it's over a full category in each case. So most of our kids are saying, my faith is important to me. Might not be exactly what your faith is, but my faith is important to me. And that is across the board and gets even better when you get to year 12. Can you see? Starts out here, has a bit of a bump in the middle, and then starts to slide back towards the lower 1 mark for the best score. This is where this is quite discouraging now. That's the good stuff. Now some of the bad stuff before we get into what we're here to talk about, family. Every one of the Adventist doctrines, without exception, has taken a hit. It means that there are far fewer young people believing the traditional Adventist positions than there were 20 years ago. And I'll just run through them quickly for you. And you can see the charts up there. They drop down by around 10 to 14%. But the first one, the Bible is the only authority for Seventh-day Adventists. We're down to 1 in 3 kids who believe that. Why? Why would we get such a lousy result there? We are people of the book. We are Bible-based, Bible-bashing believers. So why is it that kids don't understand that we get our doctrine from the Bible? Any clues?
Probably they don't get it enough from home.
Maybe. My hunch, and it's only a hunch, it needs to be followed through. My hunch is that every time we say, but Ellen White says, we confuse kids with where we actually get our doctrine from. Now, it's nice to say there's a support base there, but she herself said, we get our doctrines from the Bible, not from my pen. So you've got young people who are then ultimately confused as to where we actually get our doctrines from. If you go to the next one, the Bible gives a true account of how the way God created the world. And that's dropped from 92 to 78. Has creation taken a hit? It's taken an enormous hit. But you will find that there are fewer and fewer people who believe in creation amongst the adult membership of the church as well. There are more and more arguments that are proposed to young people about this whole area. They get it fed to them. It's just an expectation that maybe God didn't create it in 6 literal days. Jesus will come back to the earth and take those who love God to heaven. Again, 93 back to 78. So that's a big shift. The next one, the 10 Commandments are still valid. Look at that, 95 to 78. If we keep coming down, the Sabbath is Saturday, You can understand why some young people can be confused, particularly over what has happened in Samoa and the change of the day from Saturday to Sunday. When you get a question like that, you say, oh, hang on. Well, is it or is it not? And there's a lot of confusion around. Tonga's been like that for decades, and now Samoa has joined them. If you look at that question, on the Sabbath, 78%. Something interesting's happening here. See that? There's a whole group of kids who have the same sort of feelings about these issues. If we keep coming down, the investigative judgment has dropped from 53 to 38, and I could ask the question, how long has it been since you've heard a sermon on the investigative judgment? Pastors, how long have you preached since you preached one on the investigative judgment? It's something that's really not well understood. If we go down further, when people die, they remain in the grave until the resurrection. Again, that's an enormous shift, 20 percentage point shift. Why? Every second TV program tells them that when you die, you really don't die, that you go on. There's some other place you go to. Your soul lives on. My own niece, when she came to Andrews, I had this big debate with her over what happens when you die. She said, no, you're wrong. Uncle Baz, you're wrong. And I said, well, I'm just telling you what the Bible says. No, but you're wrong. When you die, it's not the end. You keep going. And I said, well, that's not what the Bible says. Nor is it what I believe. I believe in soul sleep, not immortal soul. And it was really interesting. And when I pushed her on it, I found out that what she was giving me was not Bible-based, but was common stuff within the community. She didn't have a text to support herself. And you can go on. The wicked will not burn forever. The whole thing about hell, look at where that is. So many of our kids do believe in an everlasting hell. Well, you have to if you don't believe that when you die you're dead. You've got to go somewhere. And of course there must be some really bad people, so they've got to go to hell, right? It's only logical. But it's not Bible-based. We could go on to the next one, and I'll just come down. Ellen White is down from 77 to 61. Seventh-day Adventist Church was raised up by God with a message to prepare the world for the second coming of Christ, down to 76%. The health message, 74% now, as opposed to 88 20 years ago. And the salvation is a gift, God's gift to those who trust Jesus, is down from 91 to 77. So that's quite concerning for anybody that works with kids, don't you think? So those are some sobering results. There's the ambivalence. These are the kids who just said, well, I don't know whether I believe or don't believe. I don't know. So, and have a look at where the big don't knows are. A third, there are as many people, many young people, who don't know about the investigative judgment as who actually hold with it. And you can come down. There's been a growth in this area for the wicked burning forever, the state of the dead, Ellen White's ministry. There's just so many young people who are confused and don't know. Now, these are young people who go to an Adventist school and get taught Adventist teachings. So we've got to ask some very serious questions. All right, Nigel. Now I honour what I said I'd come to do. Adventist families. What I'm going to show you is quite startling, because it means that to get the 4 different family groupings, the 4 different styles, you have to have critical mass in order for the scale to work. So it means, I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a minute, but it means that we've got all variations of Adventist family within the church. So we've got Adventist families who, well, let me show you what they look like in a second, but I want to give you some good news before we get to that. We have found that more fathers now are prepared to talk about their faith just about every day than there were 20 years ago. So dads have got serious about sharing their faith. And I want to tell you, the biggest predictor of children having faith is a mother's faith. And if a mother, Jose Rojas, and some of you have probably heard him speak, Jose says to groups of young people, hands up all of those who have a praying mother, a mother who prays for them. And all the hands go up. And he says to them, give up right now because God answers their prayers. If you look at it, a mother's faith is an enormous predictor of what happens in the life of her children. It's always been that way. But we cannot underestimate the power of a father talking about his faith. Australian men have not typically talked about their faith. And if you look at it, it's grown quite dramatically. It's still only less than a quarter, 1 in 4, but we now have male parents who are prepared to talk about their connection to Jesus. My son used to come and get me when I worked at the division office. He used to come and pick me up at the airport. I travelled for 7 months of the year, and the most meaningful times I had with my son was when we went to the airport and back. So he'd come and get me in the car, and on the way home, the first thing he would say to me as soon as we'd put the bags in, Dad, tell me the stories. Tell me the stories. He wanted me to talk to him, to relay the stories of what I had just experienced with God and his people across the Pacific. Those stories for him are ones that he still recalls and now as a father himself tells his own children. So that faith sharing by fathers is really important. Probably the faith sharing, the faith talk is as important as any other aspect of what a parent will do. And it may be really simple. Instead of swearing when you hit your thumb, you take the opportunity to step back and suck it and wait till it stops stinging and then say something about how good God is, that I only hit my thumb and not all of my fingers. If we look at this is Christian commitment related to the frequency with which fathers talk about their own personal faith. The father who talks about their faith just about every day, have a look at, out of a possible score of 6, you get 5.2. So this is Christian commitment. If you want your kids to be committed to Jesus, men, you need to talk about your faith to your children, and specifically to your sons. Be real about it. Talk about how God is real in your life and what he does for you. So you can see the difference, and they're actually doing it better than they did 20 years ago. So our men have learned how to express what is happening between them and God to their children. Family worship, sadly, has diminished dramatically. We used to have 32% of our homes have worship of some sort daily or twice a day. Excuse me. We are now down to 26%. So you've moved from a third to a quarter of homes where family worship is a regular feature. Does it make a difference if you have family worship? How much of a difference does it make? I want to tell you, even if you do it badly, read something and stutter and stammer and stumble your way through it, it is better than not doing it at all. When I show you the results for what happens, this is Christian commitment and frequency of family worship. If you do it more than once a day, you get a 5.3, a mean score of 5.3 out of 6. It's through the roof, just by doing it twice a day. Hopefully you do it well and it's meaningful. It's not just time for worship, kids get in here, we're going to get this done, then we can watch TV. Hopefully you're doing it better than that. But that sort of daily or more than once a day has a real impact. Incidentally, if you do it several times a week, it has a really good result. So parents, please do it. Just lift up Jesus in your homes. You know, even if it's only a couple of times a week, even if it's only to open the Sabbath, please do it, because it has an impact on the Christian commitment of the young people that live in your home. It has a real impact. My dad used to leave before we got up. I'll tell you, this is my own little testimony now. My father worked 6 days a week. And he left before I got up, and he came home after I'd gone to bed. Some of my best memories of my dad sneaking in on his hands and knees and kissing me on the head because he thought I was already asleep. But I had no real connection with my father. Sabbath was the big day, and then we went to a tiny little church. And my father was the head elder, the Sabbath school leader. He was, most weeks he had to preach as well, because we had a pastor that had a lot of churches. On Sabbath, the one day we got the chance to be together, my dad was up the front. But Sabbath afternoons were the highlight of my week, because then we had him to ourselves. And my sister and I, we would go to the botanical gardens, and my sister and I would crawl all over our father. You know, touch-starved, skin-hungry, just desperate to be with him. And those few hours on Sabbath afternoons, I can trace back to where my faith came from. My father is a deeply, deeply spiritual man. It's hard for me to talk about him. He's a prayer warrior in the extreme. He's a man who will drop everything and pray. And powerful, powerful prayers that you know from last night broke through into this boy's heart. So what you do with your kids is immensely important. Guys, the church can never make up for what you do at home or don't do. We can't. We see your kids once a week. You have them every day. So that the school has more connection with our kids than does the church family. So we've got an uphill battle if we're expecting the church to do it all, because it can't. It can't do it all. It has to come back to the family. Now, this is what I was talking about a few minutes ago when I said I'll talk to you about this. We had two... Who's the English teacher here? Have we got an English teacher? Lily? You're good at everything, Lily. Do you say continuums or do you say continua? All right, well, we'll go with continuums then. We've got two continuums here. We asked these young people to tell us how protected they felt by their parents. You know, how mollycoddled. Did your parents ever let you make any decisions, or were they always sweating on you? That's one scale. And the other scale was, how much did they express the fact that they loved you, that they cared about you? So did your parents care about you, or did they protect you? And did they protect you? And then we got 4 different parenting styles that grew out of that. The first one here is affectionless constraint. This is the parent who never tells the child they are loved and has very, very strong boundaries. We've got them in the church, guys. And I don't know whether that's you. Incidentally, this is the child's perception. So, affectionless constraint. This is the kid who feels like the father or the mother is saying, I don't care about you, but you step out of line, I'm going to knock your eyes together. I'll knock you right into next week if you step over that line. Now, that sort of parenting style, how effective do you think that is?
Very negative.
It's negative. What sort of results are you going to get?
Fear.
And that translates into? Rebellion. And if you look at it, Brad Strawn said it 20 years ago, if we use religion to control, they will use religion to rebel. Now, they may conform for a while, but ultimately they will buckle under it and they will walk away. Now, if we look at the next style, style number 2, affectionate constraint. This is where the child knows that they are loved, deeply loved. I care about you more than my own life. You know, my dad was one of, well, he wasn't, he was the actually next style, but, I knew that my father would give his life for me. And even when my own son was taken to hospital and looked like he would not survive, my father's prayers were powerful. And he said to me, Baz, I would gladly swap places with Danny. I would do it now if I could. But we've got to leave him with God because God knows. And God cares far more than we ever can. I was so distressed I couldn't pray. But my father's prayers carried me. So that affectionate side of my father was just incredibly important to me. To know that I was loved. Not just a theoretical thing, but to know. And it's really difficult now. My father was never a touchy-feely sort of person. Now he has trouble getting out of the chair. I go to see him in the old folks' home and he's trouble getting out of the chair. And I embarrass him every trip. Because I reach down and I hug him and I kiss him and I kiss him and I kiss him. And he says, don't! Get off! But I need that more than he does. I don't know how long I've got him for, because he's 84 now, and he and Mum are not doing real well. But that affectionate constraint, that's probably the Adventist home model from Ellen White's time. I'm going to come to the same. I'll come to the same conclusion in a second. If we come to the next one, the parenting style, affectionate independence. This says, I love you to death. Well, that's probably a bad way to say it. I love you to bits, but I'm going to allow you to make decisions. You will choose, but you can still come home again. That sort of parenting style actually does really, really well for the mid-teen to late teen years. That style does better for the younger kids, the constraint, the boundaries. But if you're still putting up these really strong boundaries and constraining and punishing when a child gets to 15, you're in trouble, or they are, because it's not going to work. And this final style, affectionless independence. This is the father who says to the son, you are the biggest mistake I ever made. I don't care what you do. I just don't want you doing it in my face. Have we got those types of parents in the church? We have got every one of those styles in the church, otherwise the scales don't work. So young people have identified, and sadly, they come out at something like 20% for these two disastrous ones, and this one here comes out at something like 40%. So you've got, I don't know, just over 20% for this one here. Let me show you what it looks like in reality now. This is self-esteem. You want your kids to feel good about themselves. Affectionate independence, these are mean scores. Affectionate independence does so much better than any of the other styles. The worst style of all is affectionless constraint. I had a young fellow describe to me through his tears, he came up to me and he said, I don't believe any of this. And I said, oh, that's up to you. This is just statistical data. You don't have to believe it or not believe it. This was 20 years ago. And he came up to me and said, I don't believe that. He said, I love God, and I had a parent that was like that. And then he started to cry, and I said, he was talking about his sister. And his sister had become a prostitute, and he was really upset about her life. And I said to him, are your tears for your sister, or are they really for you? And with that, he started to sob, and I took him for a walk. And he told me about the behaviour of his father. He was walking through an open field, and he kicked a sod of dirt. And his father completely thrashed him until he was unconscious. And I, you know better when you've done counselling training and you've been around for a while, you know better than to ask why. Why did he do that? But I did, because I'm a slow learner. And I said, why did that happen? And he said to me, because the field is for a place where you work, you don't play, and I was playing. So he's taking ownership for his father's brutality. He came home one day after school and his little brother was hungry, so he put his hand into a jar and took out some raisins and he gave them to his brother. And his father came home, tied his hands together, winched him off the floor and horsewhipped him. Why? Why? Well, he'd stolen. And in fact, his father wanted to take his name to the church board to have him removed from church membership. That sort of punitive behaviour is affectionless constraint at its worst. That boy today is a pastor. Thank God for some mentors who came into his life. But if you look at the journey here, affectionless constraint does the worst of all, and I'm going to show you these graphs. It does the worst of all on all of them. The child who doesn't get told that they are loved and who is restrained, that child does worst on every measure. Now, I don't know what parenting styles you are using, but I would encourage you to season it with love. Be very open about that.
But do you not think that the young generation have more get more opportunity from love as we older generation? We older generation got never a praise of never and say van, oh, you are a good boy, you are a good girl. Never was a set.
Parenting style has changed, thank God.
Exactly, so the youngsters, yeah. But on the other hand, now at the moment, it goes overboard. If ze maar putting even the heels up, then they are saying, yeah, you're a good girl. No, midway. That is the way to go.
Let me say this, and I'm only a parent of 2 children, and I thank God for their mother, because I was not around for those critical years very much. But I don't see that there's ever enough love, and I would encourage you to err on the side of love, the sort of love that we talked about in this morning's sermon. A love that goes beyond the reasonable, to accept back the stinking, wayward, profligate prodigal. So if we look at it, you're going to see this. I'll pound this in several times, but on every measure you will see an affectionate independence does better. Doesn't matter whether it's in the South Pacific Islands or whether it's in Australia, New Zealand. That style where young people are given the right to make choices and in an environment, in a cradle of love, do much better than any other style of parents. Again, denominational loyalty. Do you want them to be good Adventists? And you can see I've given you the style of both the mother and the father. And it's strange that in many of the homes, the parenting style of the parents is totally different. If you can't get that into concert and be similar in the way you parent, you caught some very grave difficulties. But again, affectionate independence does much better for denominational loyalty. It does much better for Adventist standards. And you can see again there how much better. It does much better for, we're looking at Adventist culture and standards here. And if you look at it, where there are no SDA parents, and we had quite a number of young people in our school system who've become Adventists and don't have SDA parents. If you look at them, they do reasonably well with the standards of the church. Don't drink, don't smoke, don't chew, don't go with girls who do. Well, no, don't drink, don't smoke. If you look at that side of things, they do reasonably well, but when they've got one SDA parent, they do markedly better, and where they've got 2 SDA parents, it's a whole category shift. So parents and their relationship to, if you want your kids not to become involved in at-risk behaviours, a lot of it will sheet back to you as a parent. My son came home smelling of tobacco, And I was torn. I didn't want him wrecking himself. I didn't want him building up a habit that he would struggle to get rid of. I was really distressed for him. And I took him for a walk and I said, Dan, I tried it too. I smoked. And I know that you're only experimenting. He said, that's all I'm doing, Dad. Everybody's done it. I just want to try it. And I said, well, you've tried it. I would love to think that you would realise how dangerous this thing can be, how much damage it can do to you as a person. And he said, he started to say things about who I was and why I was saying that. And I said, Dan, it doesn't matter who I am. I'm your dad. And I care more about you as a person than I do about my job. Whether you believe that or not, I do. And I want the best for you. I decided I wouldn't hammer him for a bad decision. I wouldn't punish him. I wouldn't take away his privileges or anything else. I would talk to him. He never did it again. And I wanted to follow through on that approach, because I suppose that's the way my own parents dealt with me, to almost disastrous results. I won't deal with the Adventist school, but I do want to talk about this. Any questions on parenting style? Does it make sense to you that a style where there's heaps of love and permission is given for decision making comes through as being the best way to go?
It absolutely rings true for me. My parents are the first one. My brother and my sister are not in the church. And in fact, my dad told me the other day that he sent the pastor around to my sister Sue Ellen's place in Canberra. He tore strips off the pastor and then tore bigger strips off Dad. I don't ever want to be a Seventh-day Adventist. Get him out of here. Don't want anything to do with it. My father and mother are lovely people now. They've mellowed a great deal, but it was very much affection was constrained when we were growing up. I mean, I left the church myself for a good long time, and I've only come back because I met Jesus.
Yeah.
Because of my parents.
Oh, thank God for Jesus.
Also, a big thing in the family is the difference between father and mother. A mother is not a father, and a father is not a mother.
And you know what the stats are telling us now? That something like 80% of children, current children who are not teenagers, will live in a single parent setting for some time before they turn 18. 80% of them. So it means that their parents may separate for a while. But we've got a huge number of single parent families in our churches. We've got kids who do not. I've got a PhD student working on what happens to fatherless young men. How do they cope? Where do they end up? What's the best way of working with them? And we're talking about the big brother, big sister program at the moment to see whether that it's not a substitute, but they need that influence in their lives. Let me talk about this stuff that we've got on the board now. This is Adventist youth and their traditional behavioural expectations, their attitudes. These are now what we've determined Adventist culture and Adventist standards. Young people, I'll just tell you what they are to start with, and then you think about where you stand on them. First one, tobacco, alcohol, rock music, movie theatres, dancing, illegal drugs, sex outside of marriage, unclean meat, watching adults-only movies, 15-plus movies, Sabbath, Saturday, and finally the caffeine, drinking tea, coffee, Red Bull, Coca-Cola. Kids, when I did a factor analysis, clumped these in two clumps. These were the non-negotiables: tobacco, alcohol, illegal drugs, sex outside of marriage, unclean meats, and the Sabbath. These other ones were negotiable as far as they were concerned. They were Adventist culture and they weren't standards. Now, they made that distinction 20 years ago, And I thought, I wonder whether it's still the same. Well, it is still the same, because you've got it. Rock music has actually gone down. 20 years ago, 47% said you shouldn't listen to heavy rock or rap music. Well, that's now down to 39%, which is what I was expecting, all right? I was expecting that to happen. If we look at the watching movies in movie theatres, I thought that would have been non-existent. I actually thought that we'd have about 3% of kids who said you shouldn't go to movie theatres. I don't go. My daughter said to me, Dad, everybody goes to the movies. And I said, that's not true, Kim. Not everybody goes, because you're not. And she said, that's not fair. And I said, well, I will get to the place when you turn 16, I will let you go to the movies. And she said, okay. And I said, but on one condition, that when you go, you do all of the reading first to find out what they say about the movie, whether the movie is something that you could go into with Jesus. And when you're in there, if you are offended, if you as a young Christian are offended by what you see, I pray that you will have the courage to stand up and walk out. You know the movie she first went to? She went to The Piano. She read all the crits. Everybody raved about this wonderful movie. She gets there. I haven't seen it, but she gets there and she told me that in one scene there's full frontal nudity, male nudity. And this is her first confrontation with this. And she got up. She was with all of her school friends, all of her Adventist friends. They're all sitting in the row. And she got up and she walked out. And I thank God for that. And I said, I'm sorry you had to go through that, Kim. You walked out all alone. You must feel wretched now. And she said, Dad, I got up and walked out and my whole group of friends went with me. And I said, thank God for that. It's amazing how your standards change, though. I don't know that she would be doing that these days, even though she's a pastor's wife now. You just you get used to that sort of stuff. But if you look at it, going to movie theatres has gone up. One should choose not to dance has actually gone up. Do you believe that, Lily? I love that girl. I couldn't believe that there was 19%, 1 in 5 kids saying you shouldn't dance, because I've never met an Adventist kid who says that you shouldn't dance. And I'm going to share something with you. Oh, no, I'm not, because we're on tape. I worked at the seminary where we trained pastors from all over the world. And it was fascinating to see their attitude to dancing. So you get a change here, it's gone up. Then you come here, the drugs has gone down. These are all still pretty healthy. This one blew me out of the water. One should choose not to watch MA 15 plus movies. Has nearly gone up 100% in 20 years. So kids are now more discriminating. Well, no, they're saying they are. I'm going to show you whether they are in a minute or not. And fewer of them say that you should. More of them say you shouldn't drink caffeinated drinks. Does it mean that they don't? They are young people. So they say you shouldn't, but then they do. And I don't want to be hard on young people, so do you. And that's why you did this thing this morning. You will tell us how many of you actually believe these sorts of things. Alcohol consumption, this hasn't changed dramatically. It has changed a little. You can see that there are 10% more in year 12 who've actually had alcohol now by the time they get to the end of high school. The next one is going to parties where alcohol is present. The one difference there was in the two groups last time, we did the local church last time, which ethically we couldn't do this time. But we had 50% who went to church school and 50% who went to state school. They believed the same. Their belief system was identical. The only difference was in this area of at-risk behaviour. If you don't want your kids getting involved in alcohol, parties where alcohol is present, premarital sex, all of those at-risk behaviours, send them to an Adventist school, because they do so much better in that environment than they do in a state school. So there's the parties, and again, look at the difference. It's not that much, is it, in 20 years? 2%. For the older ones. Binge drinking, that's changed and that's become really popular. You know what binge drinking is? 5 in a row until you're legless and your friends carry you home, but the trouble is they're all legless too. So you all roll around in your own vomit. That's binge drinking. Here we go to the next one, shoplifting. This troubles me. We've got a growing number of young people, 30%, who are involved in criminal activity. And look how many are doing it every couple of weeks, something like 3%, which out of our group is 30. It's probably about 80 kids who are involved in habitual shoplifting amongst our church school kids. Viewing pornography, I have to tell you, I was really, really pleased with this result. We've now got fewer years 7 and 8 young people who've had exposure to pornography, and yet it is so readily available. First time I got caught, I was doing some research and I typed in the White House. Don't do that, because it takes you to a porn site and puts you in a loop that you can't get out of. It's great when you're working on a church computer. It's just... So a lot of these kids get exposure to porn without realising where they're actually headed. But the numbers are down, and that's really exciting. Do you think, I'll just ask you a question, do you think the numbers would be as bad in the South Pacific Islands as they are here? They are much worse. And I'll tell you why, and this is really sad, but the telcos, so many kids in the islands, high school kids in the islands, have mobile phones, which they buy from the local store, and it's preloaded with pornographic images. And so they're picking up a phone innocently and they're scrolling through, and the photos are already loaded. So we had double the numbers in the islands who have been exposed to porn, and they get sucked in and they get told how to do sexting. And so before you know it, they are the pictures. So again, look at the results at year 12. It's down for years 9 and 10, down for 7 and 8, and only marginally different for 11 and 12. I thank God for that. The last thing I would ever want for any of the young people of our church is to get their view of sexuality from the porn industry. Absolute disaster. And creates imagery that you cannot get rid of, and ultimately is totally destructive of the most important relationship in your life. If you want to ruin your marriage, there's so many Adventist husbands are hooked on porn. And I would say in a room this size, some of you are here, my brothers, and it needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency by you. Don't let it destroy your marriage. Don't let it destroy your children. It's insidious and it's destructive. So we can look at sexual intercourse. There are greater numbers now involved, but again, less than 20%. What's the figures for the community? Do you know? 18-year-olds. How many 18-year-olds are still virgins who are outside of a Christian community? Do you know? It's well over 70% who are non-virgins. So you're looking at about 30%, and that incorporates the Christians. So you've got about, well, it's not even 20%, it's 18% who have had sexual intercourse. So that, it's sad, but I am really pleased with that. I wish it was none, but That's a good result. These are at risk. This is the at-risk index, and this is a bit disturbing. This is the number of kids who've reported one or more at-risk indicators. That means they've been binge drinking half a dozen times. And you can look at how we get these results, but they're quite staggering. I would like to think these young people are experimenting. These are the ones who are reporting 3 or more. This is no longer experimentation, this is lifestyle. You've got 16% of Year 12s who are really hooked into 3 or more at-risk behaviours, which means they're drinking regularly, they're smoking weekly, they are taking illegal drugs. So that's a vast number. It's nothing like the community, but it's still a cause for concern. I can keep going for hours. You're looking at years of my life here, but I'm going to stop there and just field a few questions. Or am I? I used to be undecided, but now I'm not sure. I want to go just into one more chart and just show you the impact of mentoring. These are the mentors and their impact on self-worth. Where you've got no mentors at all, 36% of kids still have high self-worth, but if you put 4 or more mentors into a kid's life, 63% end up having self-worth, high self-worth. An adult's input into a child's life, an adult who's not their parent, is really powerful. So if you're going to do youth ministry in your church where mentoring would happen, you really do a wonderful thing for the kids of your church. Same for denominational loyalty. Look at the shift from 40% to 77% of them who end up being loyal to the denomination just because they've had adults in their lives who care about them, apart from their parents. I can show you the dramatic results for what happens when you put youth ministry in the mix. Will you allow me to do that? Or have you had enough? Just all yawn in unison. All right, I'm going to show you. Or I wanted to show you the difference. Oh, that's it there. This is their attitudes. Remember I showed you the attitudes of young people to the local church and how positive they had shifted? Have a look at the changes when you put youth ministry in the mix. Every single one of them. And I say this for the pastors who are present. The church pastor is interested in me jumps from 20% to 43% just because the church is doing youth ministry. You don't have to have any part in it. You don't even have to show up. You do nothing. And the kids think you love them. I mean, why wouldn't you do it? Choose anybody. You don't have to do it well. You just have to do it. So if you have youth ministry, you get really incredible results. This is how they feel about the church. I go to church programs because I want to. Moves from 31 to 58%. There's a 100% increase in how kids feel about going to church just if you do youth ministry. Wow, why wouldn't you do it? It's powerful. But, that's 30 years of my life wrapped up in that statement. So I'll stop now and we'll have some questions.
I've got a question about baptism. Your stats show that 18-year-olds are less likely to be baptised these days than before. So I just wanted to know, do you know what those reasons are?
A glib little statement would be that they are more spiritual than they are religious. Another statement may be that they are the postponed generation. They postpone leaving home, they postpone finishing degrees, they postpone getting married, they postpone having children, they postpone everything. So why shouldn't they postpone getting baptised? Somewhere in all of those, there's some truth. I don't know, and until we actually, we got a researcher up the back and I'd love to see her get involved in some of this. It would be really neat for someone to sit down and bite into that question and say, okay, why? What's happened? What, you know, because this just tells you, stats just tells you what is, but we don't know why it is. And if we move out of this quantitative sort of research and move into qualitative research, you would begin to ask the question, why? And you'd sit down with young people and you say, hey, how many of you are baptised? None. Why? And there's, let me give you, I've got a story for everything, so I'm sorry about this, but I had a young mother come to me and she said, look, my sons want to be baptised, will you have studies with them? And I said, sure. And she said, no, will you? And I said, yes. I will come. She said, no, I want to make sure you do. 3 times now they've asked and nobody's ever showed up. So if you say you're going to come and you don't, that'll be the end for them. And I said, look, if I have to crawl over broken glass, I'll be there. And I was. And the first one got baptised, and then the next year, second one got baptised. He's 18, this boy, and he got baptised in the lake out the front of my house. He insisted on every one of his friends coming, and after he was baptised, he was the only one out of his whole group from the school who was baptised. So you know what he's done? He's set up a Bible study now and asked me to come so I can talk to all of his friends. So, you know, I don't think it's a reticence. Sometimes it might be that they're just not asked. But until we do the research, we don't know why.
When a person is baptized, before had certain habits, is baptized, he believes himself that he is on the right track, goes to church and think that he is changed. But the behavior is not changed and stays the same.
Could be.
What is the click missing?
And it's a good question, and that also needs to be addressed. Yeah. Once you do research, it opens up. You end up wanting to chase every rabbit down every burrow. And I, at the end of this, after 260 pages of writing, I had more questions than I had before I started, and I'm just desperate for. Anybody want to do a PhD here, Lily? Come back.
Yeah, your books, are they available op the Prospect Road?
It's nearly after Sabbath. I brought 3 with me. They can get them from Avondale Academic Press.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, just for your insomnia. Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? I know it's late and we've been going all day today.
I've got one. Right at the beginning, you talked about how there's been a change from a decrease in the religiosity and an increase in spirituality, and then that sort of ties in, I think, possibly to the decrease in church standards and church beliefs and things.
Mm.
But that same increase in spirituality but decrease in religiosity is also seen in the community at large. So you think this is just reflecting that, or is it something as a church that we are doing?
It definitely has been seen in the community at large. There is an openness. Most of you are aware of the term postmodernism. We've moved from postmodernism. We're now into post-postmodernism, liquid modernity. You know, we finally catch up with some of these things after they've finished. But most postmodern young people are open to the spiritual. They don't just write off the supernatural anymore. And you can I think we're in a better place now for evangelism than we've ever been, because our community is now open to the spiritual. They never were. When I started in ministry, it was tough because people weren't interested, particularly in secular Europe where I started. I've seen a complete shift in attitudes, but it means that they would say to you, the minute you say, I want to share the truth with you, they would see you as being abusive, because you have one option, and they are completely into pluralism, multiple options, and it means that they are, for the most part, that they would say, that's nice for you, but it's not for me. So there is a greater level of spirituality in the community, and that is probably reflected in kids as well. I think you answered your own question, and I rabbited on for 5 minutes for nothing.
things these days.
If I come closer, then you can speak into this mic so it can be captured.
I'm very soft talker.
No, well, I was hearing you well, but I wasn't sure whether anybody else was.
Right. What I'm going to say, supernatural is plastered all over the television today. Now, is that taking away God in the point of view? Because God's the only one who can do supernatural things, angels, etc. But the situation is, you look at the television and you see it plastered over television all the time. All these shows, supernatural events. Now, is that helping, or Satan helping to demoralise supernatural?
I don't ever see Satan helping any of us.
No, not by them being helped to destroy.
Yeah, help to destroy. I think what's happened is it's so prolific through the media, and it presents one approach, which means the good spin-off of that is that most people are now open to the spiritual, but what they are being fed is disastrous. So it's good because they're now open, but it's bad because of what they're actually receiving. And I wish that we had time for me to show you what kids are actually doing with their time, because they're not watching TV.
Right, but also in the point of view, the Bible's full of fairy tales because it's full of supernatural events. So, and I look at television and I see all these supernatural events that these people are portraying, and you kind of get the false sense of security that they can actually do it. Do you follow what I mean?
Yep,
and that makes
I
the
do.
Bible look like it's just a full of fairy tales.
Myths.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's, yes, 1, 2. Let's start at the back and we'll come forward.
The one I thought was interesting about was the impact of worship.
Yeah, it's a beautiful voice you've got. It's going to be very hard for me to speak after you've finished. Can you just lift
I've
the
never
timber
had
a
that
bit?
reaction before. It's the microphone.
No, it's not. You've got beautiful timbre in your voice. It's just
Timber.
keep going. I've put you right off now. That was
got it
my
from my
plan.
Was the impact of worship. This is back into the why, but do you think that's perhaps not necessarily the impact of having the daily worship, but that worship was a litmus test of how important God was in the family?
I think that is a really insightful statement. And that's something that also needs exploring, because we've now found that the more you do worship, the better the results. But is it really saying to the kids, we see God as so important, we have to spend time with him daily? That's a different thing. And if that's the message they're picking up, despite what's being done in worship, then I say thank God for that. But you could be right, and I don't know, because I've given you the what, and again, not the why. Well,
But is worship niet in the same equal van as study music? When you study music, you do every day you practice, and you become better on the instrument, right? Is that not the same with worship?
there may, again, I can't say yes or no, I don't know, but I think there may be something in that as well, because it becomes an habitual thing.
Exactly.
Does our church have any formal conversation with other denominations about, for instance, mentoring our young people and other things there? Is there any dialogue between our church and...
Yes, I am part of the Youth Ministry Educators Forum, which is an international body that meets. I have presented papers there, and I disseminate the papers that I receive from that body. So there is, and I'm not the only one who does that. That's because of my academic interest, but it's also done on a much wider basis than that. So we are talking to other people, and if you look at a lot of what happens in youth ministry, for example, we borrow and steal from each other. Okay, I think we better have prayer and close after this final question, because we'll end up with people walking, and it'll be just Nigel and I talking to each other shortly.
Just one last question.
It is the last one? Wasn't that nicely said?
Excellent.
Did I trigger anything in you to say that?
Perhaps. You mentioned about the kids that they are spending their time elsewhere. Can you give us a Reader's Digest version of that?
What kids are into at the moment, kids are into the social media. And when they do go online, rather than just Googling some extraneous information, they're more than likely going to go to Facebook or one of those social media outlets. They're also, I thought initially, I put in a question on tweeting and thought, most of the time I'm going to get people say, what is this? Well, I was shocked at the number of people who are into tweeting, because I'm not. And I know the word and I know what happens, but I wouldn't have a clue how to do it. And you get to a certain stage where you just don't want to know either. I don't care anymore. I've stopped using Facebook because I got burned badly. My daughter rang me and said, Dad, someone's hacked your Facebook account. Go in and look what you've got on your screen. And I did, and I thought, that's it. I'm out of here. I don't want to do that. But so they're using social media an awful lot more across the board, and I was shocked that's happening in the islands as well. But and so that's part of how they use their time. I can, in this little book, you've actually got all of that, and which I'll give you the page number it's on. We're looking at mobile phone use. These are the things we measured. Facebook, you've got in years 11 and 12, you've got 32% of kids who are using Facebook several times a day. Not just opening it up and having a look, several times a day. And every day you've got 60%, 61% of kids who are going onto Facebook every day or more than once a day. We looked at Twitter, and again, that's not enormous. In fact, it's probably about 85% have never used it, so 15% are. Mobile phones, you've got only 10% of kids in years 11 and 12 who don't have a mobile phone, and they are texting. I am stand in awe at the speed with which fingers can find the right keys. And it just comes up on your screen. And then I spend the next 20 minutes trying to find the things, and then I'm trying to find the smiley face so I don't have to do anything, and try and work out what LOL is and all that. I'm showing my age now. I heard a really good one. ABFF. It's one that's used by the old folks' home at best friend's funeral. So there's lots of those little, I'm sorry, will you forgive me after? But, the kids have got all of these little things, and I get messages from kids, and from students, and I spend most of my time trying to work out what the letters mean. What is that? And it's mind-blowing that they've got a whole language of their own, and by the time you've learned it, they've changed it, so don't bother trying. So mobile phones, the internet, if you look at it, only 2% of kids in Adventist schools have not used the internet. It's now almost required. DVDs and TV, 3% don't have access to that. So it's in our homes. MA 15 plus movies, 15% have never used them, which means that you've got 85% who are watching those sort of movies on a pretty regular basis. And that's frightening. Dancing, and this is where I said, so many of them said, well, 40% have never done it, which means that 60% have. Movie going, listening to heavy rock music, caffeine consumption, that's an interesting one. 75% have used it. And some of them are using it several times a day and wondering why they can't sleep. Some are using it every day, every few days. So you're looking at a very large percentage of kids who are taking caffeine hits constantly, and some of them are real jolts. Really, they're real wake-up things. So all of that sort of information's there. Playing violent video games. We've got probably about 50% of kids are into violent video games as well. So that's all in there, and that gives you a bit of an insight. I hope that answered the question satisfactorily. Let me pray for you. Our Father in heaven, we are really aware of how important it is for the church and the school and the family to all play from the same music sheet, to be in concert with each other, to see the best for our young people as the most important thing that they do. Father, we thank you for the families that are represented here this afternoon. They've had and are having enormous impact on the next generation. Lord, may we reflect Jesus in all that we do. May his love be evident in our homes, in our church, and in our school. We just revel in him. We praise you for him. We rejoice in his love. And we take great courage and hope from the fact that he said he would return again soon. Lord, we place our lives in your care. As this Sabbath comes to a close, we are just grateful for an opportunity every week to just stop, to refocus, to get to know you and our brothers and sisters a little better. So, Father, we thank you for that. We praise you, we worship. In Jesus' name, amen.